Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
Nothing like a Mo Seider 4-assist game to generate some definitely not reactionary reactions on the podcast the next night.
I mean, it's a good counterbalance to the reactions of the last episode.
Yeah.
Certainly swung the pendulum to the other side.
The Red Wings said, look, we are what we are. But guys, last episode was a little bit doom and gloom, so we'll give you some fun to talk about. It was still a very prototypical Red Wings game based on their roster. But hey, a 7-5 win, multiple multi-point players, Mo Seider with his offensive breakthrough of the season so far. Yeah, we'll take it. Not too bad.
Can't complain when the Red Wings U23 department is humming along very nicely the last handful of games.
Yeah, I saw that stat from Ice Hockey Gifts. That's like, we've known that they've been doing well, but that is a very, like, that's the calling card for the Red Wings right now. Is everything going well? No, but the kids are still doing all right.
Just don't look at that exact stat line for the rest of the team.
Don't worry about all that.
Yeah, just the future is here.
Quick story. I was joking about this before the episode, but it's worth hearing. Evan and I went through a lot of effort to help, and Brad deserves this. Brad's a good hockey player, and he works really hard on his game.
Oh, I know what we're talking about now.
Oh, yeah.
Brad got voted in as the WOSHL to the All-Star game as the last man in for whichever conference you're in. I don't know, it's all made up. And I was so excited, like, Evan, you and I were going to go. We were going to have signs, embarrass Brad. It was either going to be like, we heart Brad
We're
Crisco.
doing our own teddy bear toss.
Yeah, in the middle of the game,
Yep.
not sanctioned by the league. It was going to be great. We're going to have some ginger ales. We'll be cheering. We'll be chirping you. It would have been a blast. We probably would have live streamed the whole thing. Hell, we would have brought a couple of listeners, flown them out. Then I found out it's a virtual All-Star game. They're going to simulate the player in NHL, and then no. The only way that could be that flies in my book is if they make your player 5 foot even or like 5'1". But I'm pissed off. I was excited to go cheer you on as an All-Star.
If they put the NHL ratings as like true to NHL ratings, I'm going to be like a 12.
It'll be a fun game. It'll be fun watching the world's slowest NHL video game player in history.
And the third period rolls around, and he has finally cleared the offensive zone.
Yeah. I think that reminds me of one of my favorite jokes from the original lockout of this millennium, where they were like, what did players do during the lockout? And it was like Jason Allison finally finished that breakaway opportunity he started last season. Anyhow, all right, folks, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, here to talk to you about all things Detroit Red Wings, the world of the NHL, and anything else that comes up to do with hockey. I'm one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm Brad Crisco.
And I'm Evan.
Wow, you wound up to sound exhausted for that.
It's Wednesday. We're getting there.
Yeah, back to our regular schedule. On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we'll be, of course, recapping the wild, near manic 7-5 win that Detroit had at home over the Winnipeg Jets, which Rick Bowness is still not happy about, I'm sure. Probably still blowing his lid on that bench. We'll be talking about the Red Wings' defensive pairings, more specifically, is what we've seen from Mo Seider now away from Chiarot and with Jake Walman, who has been having a season himself. Is that the key to unlocking a lot of what we haven't seen from Mo Seider this season? We'll be talking about some news from down in the AHL from a Jakub Vrana perspective. Not exactly positive, unfortunately. We didn't get an opportunity last episode to talk about Dylan Larkin being voted into the All-Star game. And some NHL news. There's been a lot going on. It's probably due time that we check in on the NHL. Where is the playoff race? Who might be handing out a free ticket to the Connor Bedard lottery? Is Philadelphia reckoning with who they are as a team finally? What's been happening actually in Edmonton with former Red Wings GM Ken Holland and his team with Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, and their desperate fight to make the playoffs? No, that is not a repeat audio bite from previous seasons. And if we have time, the CHL did its best imitation of the NBA. Before all that, I want to point everyone's attention to Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA. That is an event that we run in partnership with the Detroit Red Wings. What Winged Wheel Podcast Night at the LCA is is a live episode of the Winged Wheel podcast that takes place before a Detroit Red Wings game, and everyone who's there goes and joins us, the host of the podcast, at the Red Wings game thereafter. So DetroitRedWings.com/WWP to get your tickets. You get access to the pregame live show and the game itself. The pregame live recording of the podcast has featured special guests like Ken Daniels and Mickey Redmond. We have more surprises and things in store for you in the future that we won't spoil quite yet. There's going to be merch, giveaways, prizes, Q&A, meet and greet with the hosts, but more importantly, the special guests, food and drinks available for you. It's all at Hockeytown Cafe, just a stone's throw away from the arena. And then come time for the game, we all head over to the arena. We have a Winged Wheel podcast booth at the concourse where we're going to be giving away a ton of merch to any fans in the arena. We have special Winged Wheel podcast seating sections, so we have the entire gondola booked out, which is going fast. The upper bowl and lower bowl seating as well. All tickets come with a special Winged Wheel podcast discount, and most importantly, a portion of the proceeds from every ticket sold benefits the Jamie Daniels Foundation. So we thank our good friends at the Detroit Red Wings for helping to facilitate that donation. DetroitRedWings.com/WWP to get your tickets. We hope to see you all there. The Red Wings have only played one game since last episode, where we talked a lot about maybe the ugly truths of the Red Wings season for the rest of the 2022-2023 season. Coming into this game, the Red Wings were winless in their 3 efforts in 2023. And with Winnipeg coming into town, that was looking to be a tough matchup. Winnipeg has been, to a lot of people's surprise, a really, really strong team this year. Credit to Rick Bowness in that group, because I personally wasn't expecting them to be as effective as they have been. Anyhow, no one played defense and no one played goalie, and the Red Wings won 7-5. What do you... We'll recap the game in just a moment here, but what were your overall thoughts on how that game unfolded?
Do you want the honest answer?
Oh, yeah. Brad, we have Evan here for the measured answer. You just go unhinged.
Unhinged. I'm giving the measured answer, which was the Red Wings were an absolute disaster, but they were the complete inverse of what they were all year. They weren't this calm, cool, collected 5-on-5 team that stifled a lot of chances but struggled to score. This team scored at will, but every time Winnipeg touched the puck, it turned into a 10-alarm fire in the Red Wings defensive zone. At least in the second and third period. The first period was a little more uneventful, even though it was still eventful. So I don't know if this is just shooting percentages regressing to the mean and Detroit tried to get it out of the way in one game or what happened, but it was good that the Red Wings finally found a way to actually get the puck into the net. And it felt like because they were doing that, they decided to take a night off of everything else.
Yeah, the Red Wings started the game with a 3-0 lead. First of all, Jake Walman was, I think, being highlighted in the game. He was mic'd up by Bally Sports Detroit, and he's been Detroit's best defenseman of late, I think, without a doubt. And opens up the game under a minute and a half in, steps in from the blue line. He does a little shimmy, steps in, and beats Hellebuck with a shot that probably shouldn't have beat one of the best goalies in the world. But hey, when a goalie's having a bad night, a team that wins beats them. And he opened scoring. That was the first of Seider's 4 assists, and Copp also got an assist against his former team. Berggren followed up like 6 minutes later. Again, Seider and Copp both on those assists. Berggren has done what he did on that goal quite a bit. He just finds himself in the right place, streaking into the net from that right side. I know it's not anything remarkable, but that guy's ability to find the right space, to find open ice, and just be where the puck is on a rebound. It's not talked about a lot, but it's one of those small things that helps to make him an NHL regular right now, right? Like it's hard for rookies who are highly skilled to come in and set themselves into a lineup right away. You have to do a lot of those little things right, and it's almost he almost has a veteran mind for where the puck is going to be around the net, and he's made himself useful there. I mean, to the tune of 7 goals already this season in the limited time he's played.
Yeah, it's one of those circumstances where we knew before the season who Berggren was and what his role had to be on the Red Wings. He's not a depth guy. He's not a grinder. He's not a penalty killer. So if he's going to be in this lineup, he has to be producing. He has to establish himself in a top 9 role. And we were hesitant to say that he'd be able to produce at the NHL level at this point, even if he could hang. Well, he can, and he can do it better than most of the forwards on the Red Wings.
Yep.
He did a great job finishing too. Like Hellebuyck came across, was set, and he still beat him high. That's a shooter's goal for sure. So I was somewhat surprised that he finished, but it was really nice.
He kind of does it all.
He does.
The Red Wings, I don't know. There were different points in this game where you realized, or you could see the ice was never really tilted in the Red Wings' favor, and it was just the scoreboard was starting to reflect a little bit of the way the ice was playing. The Jets got one back and made it 3-1 to close out the first, and you kind of wondered, is that it then? Is this where it starts to turn around? And then Oscar Sundqvist had a really great play down the boards where he won a puck battle, forced a turnover, and then found Dominik Kubalik streaking down the right side, and Kubalik was able to fire it home. Important goal for Kubalik because he has been ice cold lately. So for someone with the shooting talent that he has and has moved down Detroit's depth chart to the fourth line for this game, I think it was important for him to break through. And then, a lot more of what Brad so poetically put, where the Red Wings were a disaster in a lot of ways. Winnipeg was just absolutely dominating that game, like dominating to the point where it was 4-1 and they made it 4-2 off Sam Gagner, which, like, if you're ever going to not be mad that someone scored against the Red Wings, Sam Gagner is as close as it gets. Nate Schmidt made it 4-3, and honestly, at 4-3, I went, I'm not sure that the Red Wings don't lose this game by multiple goals the way this is playing out right now. They ended up with a 5-on-3, which wasn't very well received by Rick Bowness. What did Mick say? Don't give him a stick. We know what he does with that. And then Bowness, you could read Bowness's lips. It wasn't hard. He said, F off. And Mick said, we have nowhere to go, Rick. And I think Ken said, he said, have a nice day or something like that. The Red Wings ended up on a 5-on-3. Raymond had a fantastic pass to the point to Seider, who fed it to Larkin, who made no mistake, netted his 14th, that power play goal. And then from that point on in the game, it was just back and forth. I don't think the story changed. I think Winnipeg was the better team. I think the Red Wings beat Hellebuyck more often than they beat Ville Husso. Ville Husso, led in 5 goals, but at the same time, I think he made the saves he needed to.
That line did not reflect the amount of effort that Ville Husso had to endure yesterday to bring that win home. Like, he had to stop a lot of grade A chances.
Oh yeah,
that Winnipeg had in the later periods of the game.
And we've talked a lot about, Ville Husso's goaltending has come back down to reality, and they're not getting like Vezina tier or god level goaltending anymore. So he's not going to steal games, but he's also a really good demonstration of the importance of having still a good goalie in your lineup, even if he can't save a defensive tire fire of a game like that. The Red Wings didn't need Dominik Hasek in his prime in that game. They just needed someone to make enough saves against a goalie who's struggling against at the other end of the ice. The way Ned has played this year, I'm not sure Nedeljkovic would have made those saves. Hellberg's still a backup goalie who's a little bit of a journeyman. I'm not sure you could have trusted him. There were a lot of situations, a lot of simulations of this game, alternate universes, whatever you want to call it, where the Red Wings don't end up on top, and Ville Husso is a big part of that.
Yeah. What's this type of win called? The Grant Fuhr special?
Yeah, pretty much.
You're going to piss off some people. I know some people who hate the Grant Fuhr slander.
You don't have to stop the first 5. You just have to stop the 6th.
Honestly, that's the hallmark to a lot of his success. That's what people remember.
Yeah. You're going to get a lot of goals. You're going to get the lead when the other team applies the pressure. Ben, don't break. That's what Husso did. There was 1 or 2 Winnipeg goals that left you wanting. Maybe he could have had them, but for the most part, they weren't terrible goals going in on him. And for the amount of, A+ scoring chances he faced, it's an acceptable game.
The Red Wings were at one point only up 5-4. Robby Fabbri had a fantastic tip between his own legs in front, made it 6-4. It became 6-5 late, or 5 minutes-ish left in the game because of the power play goal. And then finally the Red Wings capped it off with minute something left in the game. Larkin found Raymond. Larkin sauced it to Raymond. Raymond sealed it with the empty netter. And 7-5 is our results. Wild night. I would probably not have bet on a Red Wings win over Hellebuyck and the Jets, but hey, everyone has bad nights. And what did we say last episode? Like the margin between the best teams and the worst teams in this league are way thinner than it used to be back in the day. And that's a good example of that. I want to talk about Robby Fabbri and his return. Of all the players who have been injured and come back, like think about Mata and his pneumonia, think about Bertuzzi. Oh, Bertuzzi also returned that game, by the way. Bertuzzi and multiple broken, limbs or hands or whatever, and all these players kind of getting back into the lineup. Fabbri would have been the one who I would have pushed the hardest on to say, don't expect the most from this guy, because what a devastating injury to come back from, an ACL tear, and he was out for so long, and I don't want to say he hasn't missed a step. I'm sure the guy's feeling the wind at the end of every shift, but he's looked really, really, really good.
Well, Fabbri's game is more of a cerebral game than a pace game, which if you're going to have a style of play to come back from off of an ACL tear, that's probably a good style, because he's not the guy who's going to be flying around like Dylan Larkin or Connor McDavid out there. He tends to slow the game down when the puck's on his stick, and it's working for him. This might even be a case of this is a good dichotomy versus someone who's rested versus the rest of the team who isn't.
Yeah, fresh legs.
And, relatively speaking. And then, he's got that jump. He's
realized now that was poor choice of words.
Hey, parts of them might be brand new, Ryan. You might be onto something there.
Robo Fabbri.
But, so he's probably a little more rested. He's probably got that extra motivation because he's not in the mid-season, doldrums. He's wanting to get every shift, every minute, every shot, every hit. Just ask Anton Lundell. And it's reflecting in the way he's playing. I'm sure everything will level out in a week or two, but, for the time being, it's noticeable that he's got that extra little pop behind him right now when he's out there.
Fabbri was on the sidelines, and he was also probably seeing, Jonatan Berggren steps into this team and has earned himself a top 6 spot right now. He saw Kubalik at the height of his game, and he was getting really important minutes and playing alongside Larkin. He watched Perron come in and be an integral part of the power play. These guys want their teammates to win. They want their teammates to be successful. When we had Alex Nedeljkovic on the show, and I asked him that question about, is there a goalie battle? He put it really well. I think it's framed as a battle, but it's not necessarily always that way. You still want the guy across from you to do well because you're wearing the same crest on your jersey. But at the end of the day, this is someone who could take your job. And yeah, he has some security with his contract, but we've seen the way Steve Yzerman operates. And if you're not playing to earn that spot, we'll talk about Jakub Vrana in a little bit here, you're not going to play. So that probably feeds into the motivation Fabbri had coming in that you mentioned, Brad. Not only does he have to hit the ground running, he knows he can't be seen as disposable because this isn't the Red Wings of old where there's no one now to take his spot.
You can also be excited that, you play well. It's been proven that you get opportunities and you get rewarded for playing well. So, I'm sure there was nothing but motivation for Fabbri to get back in the lineup, and he's been excellent so far.
All right, let's talk about Mo Seider. 4 assists, hell of a night for him. His first ever 4-assist game. It tied a Detroit Red Wings franchise record for most assists in a game by a defenseman. 4 apples for him, and I think much needed. A lot was being made of Seider's offensive output this season, which hasn't been plentiful. Not been the season we've wanted to see from Mo Seider. He is now up to 2 goals and 15 assists for 17 points through 39 games. So, a far cry from maybe what we expected based on last year, where he finished with 50 points. So based on pace right now, he would be about 10, 11, 12-ish points short of that. So what's the big change that Mo Seider had? He's playing with Jake Walman now. Was that a flash in the pan in a high-scoring game, or is this what we are going to see more often now from Mo Seider?
As usual, the answer generally is probably somewhere in the middle. The reason Mo Seider got more assists last night than usual is because when he made the appropriate pass last night, his teammates finally put the puck in the net, which hasn't happened a ton this season.
Yeah.
How many times have we seen him make that cross-seam pass like the one he made to Oscar Sundqvist for that play to go nowhere? Right. So do I think he's going to, all of a sudden start putting up a 60-point pace? No, I don't think so. I think he's got his confidence with the puck back a little bit. I think having Jake Walman opposite him, really has settled him down and allowed him to play with a little more confidence. And again, I don't expect him to set the world on fire, but yeah, this is probably closer to what we are going to see from Mo Seider for the rest of the season than what we saw in October.
Okay, let's take this opportunity now to talk about Seider, Chiarot, Walman. Walman's been fantastic. I think Prashant put out a stat on Walman, and the sample size here is limited, and I think everyone understands that, but he is among defensemen who have played at least 390 minutes, which was Walman's time on ice at the time that he posted that. Jake Walman was number 1 in expected goals above replacement per 60. So that's a per 60 rate. It's a rate stat, but he's producing. I imagine things are going to level out for him, but at the same time, he's looked really good. Now, I've talked a lot about why I think Ben Chiarot is a valuable player for this defense and probably makes the defense better than it was last year, but to my surprise, hasn't worked as Mo Seider's defensive partner, which is that he is a little unpredictable at both ends of the ice. And when I say a little, I mean quite, actually. It's very noticeable. And he activates a lot. Like, he activates into a lot of plays in every way. He will chase the puck up to the blue line in his own zone. He'll jump into the fray offensively, even if it's not necessarily the right or wrong call. He'll be below the other team's red line, whatever. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. But Mo Seider is also a defenseman who likes to activate. So, a lot of people suspected that, hey, if he moved Seider with someone else, he would do a little bit better. But everyone's pointing at Olli Maatta because he has been a stay-at-home steadying defenseman, at least for the early part of the season when he was paired with Filip Hronek. But now, Jake Walman, who's very much a player who likes to transport the puck up the ice and also likes to activate, that's worked for some reason. So what gives here?
He might be more predictable in the manner in which he does those things.
Yeah, so like just activation into the offensive zone or maybe stepping out of position to make a play doesn't mean unpredictable because you can at least sense when a guy's doing it, right?
Yeah.
It's amazing what happens when a player makes the right plays more often than not. And it sounds harsh, but that's really what this comes down to, because Ben Chiarot, like you alluded to, jumps a lot, which again, I deeply respect that mindset and that attitude on the ice. Be aggressive. Huge fan of that. He doesn't pick his spots all that well, especially in the D zone. Walman is similar. He's not as aggressive as Chiarot is. He doesn't jump as much in either end, but he picks his spots way better. And, you get him opposite someone like Seider, who is also a very smart hockey player who can read the play very well. He can get a sense for, Walman should go now. I'm going to hang back. Or no, I need to go now. I know he's not going anywhere, so I can go. It's that predictability, and you put, a smart defenseman instead of a more aggressive defenseman, and that makes sense that Seider would start playing better in that circumstance.
This really only reinforces to me what we've talked about the last couple episodes, which I know I think I'm a lot more gung-ho on than maybe you are, Brad. But for me, it means you have to bring back Walman. Like, not at an insane price, of course. I don't know really what the contract value will be, because what does he ask for at 26, 27 years old? But you've seen the effects on this team when Mo Seider isn't clicking, and you see the effect on his development and the rest of the defense when Mo Seider isn't clicking. You can't really afford to have that. There's a little bit of sunk cost fallacy. It's like, okay, you brought in Ben Chiarot for that much term and that much money. You want him on your top pair. But in the grand scheme of things, and we've talked about this a lot, it's really not, like, he's not being paid $8 million a year. And it's going to, with the cap increasing and it, almost a season off that contract already, you shouldn't be afraid to move him up and down the lineup to where he fits best. Like, I always preach with Ben Chiarot, like, qualms about the contract aside, he still can bring something to this defense that it didn't have before. And I just think you obviously wish it would have worked right next to Mo Seider, and hey, they might have to try again in the future. But for now, it seems like moving him down the lineup or to a different pairing that frees up Mo Seider to play with Jake Walman. It's the move for the time being, at least. So we'll see what comes of that. I still think it's got to be the top priority to bring him to re-sign him.
I would argue Larkin, but I agree he needs to be re-signed.
Yeah, don't worry about so much about Larkin. He's that'll happen when it happens. I've hardly thought about that since the season has started, and their captain and only number one center and the most important player on the team at forward and all those other things is a pending UFA.
And thankfully, it's still October 2022, so we have absolutely nothing to worry about yet.
Oh God, I get asked that. So it's the most common question whenever someone finds out or wants to talk Red Wings hockey or they know about the pod. They're like, "Hey, what's the deal with Larkin?" And I'm like, "Yeah, look, man, the resounding opinion every time you look into it is it'll get done." But I just wish everyone wasn't so comfortable heading so close to the summer. It is such a pain. Anyhow, not the first time we've talked about Jonatan Berggren, but I also want to talk about Jonatan Berggren because this guy looks like he belongs in the NHL, and they got it exactly right with the timing on his development and his path in the AHL. When they brought him up, it is worked seamlessly.
Remember how hyped we were for the 2018 draft afterwards?
Yes.
This was the third forward the Red Wings picked that draft.
Very regrettably, I do remember. I will say, I remember a lot of the conversation around Berggren was, this is probably a guy who should have been a first-round pick. And I actually remember, Brad, you were advocating to take Berggren around the time when they took Veleno. You just weren't expecting Veleno to be there.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of both. And I think I would have honestly been okay if the Red Wings walked away from that draft with Veleno and Berggren with the first two picks, but I wasn't quite that high on Veleno. But I expected Veleno to go almost 20 picks ahead of where he did. So, that worked out great for what I wanted. I also was like doing backflips when we drafted Filip Zadina. Hindsight's always 20/20.
Yeah, a lot of shame in that post-draft celebration.
But either way, we've talked about this at length in regards to the draft, where if you get two NHLers out of a draft, it's a good draft. If you get a top of the lineup player and another player out of one draft, it's a phenomenal draft. If you only get one player, but it's a top of the lineup player out of a draft, it's a phenomenal draft. We could be looking at, I hope not, but like Filip Zadina just being a fringe NHL player at 6 overall. And this draft still being a home run in hindsight for the Red Wings, because you might have your number 3 center in Joe Veleno and a top 6 winger in Jonatan Berggren. It's a fantastic problem to have. And he's doing this as a rookie who missed almost a year of development time because of a variety of injuries. And at one point, a lot of people, not just Red Wings, a lot of the prospectors were like, yeah, we're not sure if this guy has a future. He's had 2 pretty serious injuries and it's in his post-draft season. What's actually going to happen here? What's going to happen to his development? And all of a sudden, here we are. He's top 5, top 6 in rookies, points per game, out of nowhere on a team that can't score.
Yeah,
it's a truly remarkable story. And I know he's only been up for a couple months, but he's been fairly consistent in those couple months. He hasn't had that 10-game spell where you're like, where the hell did he go?
No, when they talk about what they want him to, first of all, that he's been told to find a place, like he's staying on this roster. And you can imagine, when you get to the point of waiving Jakub Vrana and Ned is down on a conditioning stint, even though it doesn't take him off the active roster, they're finding ways to keep Berggren. They're not talking about him being more consistent in terms of what Brad just mentioned in production. They're already needling in on those, those little plays that I was talking about earlier that make a regular NHLer. And that bodes well when you can get the tough stuff out of the way, and that guy can translate his AHL game with his hockey IQ and his playmaking and his finishing ability already to the NHL, and you can zero in on the puck battles, putting yourself in the right place, the million billion little things that some people call intangibles, even that make a regular NHLer. That bodes really well, and his development path is it's nice that one's just normal. Also, it's cool that he seems to be a really humble guy. Not that
he must be Swedish or something.
Yeah, no kidding. I have no problem with. I love players with personality, and I love players who know they're good at hockey and have a sick celly in there. But he just looks happy to be playing hockey, and I'm sure the organization's very happy for one that kind of has gone as planned.
Yeah,
He is a early second-round pick that should have been maybe a first-round pick who's had a tough go, like you said, Brad, with injuries, especially to his back. They worked on the things that he needed to work on. And here he is in the NHL. On the flip side, we got word just before this. No, that's the Red Wings game, actually. I should wrap that up. They have Toronto at home on Thursday night, so that's tomorrow night.
Matthews is out tonight for the Leafs, so maybe that will continue to tomorrow as well.
Could be.
They're just resting him to unleash fury on the Red Wings.
They're trying to see if they can score 12. And they have Columbus also at home on Saturday night, and we'll be back with you Sunday, maybe morning. You might even hear the episode. So that's the Red Wings' next two games. A top team and a team that they should be able to beat. So let's see how
1-1. You decide.
Yeah. Place your bets. All right. We got word just before the episode that Jakub Vrana is going to be a scratch in Grand Rapids tonight. So that has something to do with the veteran rule in the AHL. So for the last couple of nights, it's been Lashoff and Chris Squalo, I believe, who have been sitting in night. And tonight it's O'Regan and Vrana. So, there's a reason why he's not playing. But at the same time, this is very much a $5.25 million NHL player who is not playing. So could be cycling him out, and they could say, hey, fair's fair. But for a guy who needs to be playing to get back up to game speed, and from all accounts and reports, it looks like, the skill is still there for Jakub Vrana, but his legs really aren't. And his game conditioning really isn't there yet. I don't think it's nothing that he's scratched.
Yeah, if you're trying to get a guy back to NHL condition, not playing him isn't going to help him get back into NHL conditioning.
This continues to be...
Could it be slightly banged up?
Could be. He could be slightly banged up. He could be so gassed and so winded that he needs the time. Could be something behind the scenes, which would it be the first with this specific scenario and Vrana. We'll see as it progresses, but it's definitely at no matter what, you can conclude that it's not the ideal scenario. When he initially was released from the player assistance program, by all indications in practice and things like that, it was, hey, they're pushing this guy to see if he can come back to games. And if they're already in that part of like the conditioning and testing phase, it's probably close to, the Griffins haven't scratched. So that's something.
It's very peculiar.
On that positive note,
we
are going to let you know that this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is proudly brought to you by NordVPN. Are you missing out on a game or your favorite show because it's not available in your region? Let me introduce NordVPN. Using NordVPN and a click of a button, you can watch and browse as if you're elsewhere in the world, making sure you never miss a game and can watch whatever content you'd like. No need to travel across a continent or oceans for your favorite team when NordVPN brings them right to you. With over 5,000 server options, no game or show is out of your reach. Using our special link, nordvpn.com/wingedwheel, you can receive a huge discount on NordVPN cybersecurity 2-year plan plus 4 free months. We all love to binge, but privacy is a big deal too. NordVPN keeps your information encrypted so you never have to worry about your IP or location getting out. They've also doubled down on keeping you safe with their new threat protection feature. Say goodbye to intrusive website ads and malware. Even if you download an infected file, threat protection kicks in and deletes it before it makes a mess of your computer. Don't forget, there's literally no risk to you at all with their 30-day money-back guarantee. Give it a try, and if you like it, great. If you don't, they'll issue a refund, and you can pretend the entire thing never happened. Check out our special link, nordvpn.com/wingedwheel, to get your subscription started today. I just have to take a moment here. I'm not going to take too long. But someone made fun of me and Lions fans on Twitter saying, you guys are acting like you won the Super Bowl. I need everyone to know that that was the closest thing I felt to winning a Super Bowl. I was editing the podcast as the Lions ruined Green Bay's chances of making the playoffs. Aaron Rodgers' last throw ever in the NFL was a Detroit Lions pick, an interception. I just the amount of pure joy and petty happiness that came from that moment. That was the biggest bit of happiness that the Lions fans have had in a generation. I am absolutely all in on Dan Campbell. I am ready to be hurt again. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. I can't believe I'm celebrating for a team that just missed the playoffs, but oh man, all in. That was incredible.
Well, you have the huge advantage of your division sucks so hard.
5-1 against the NFC North, man. Should have been 6-0 too, but then they would have made the playoffs. So, all right, NHL news. In one of Brad's favorite topics, the All-Star game. Whenever we bring up the All-Star game off air, Evan and I have to be like, "Oh, Brad, shut up about how much you love the All-Star game."
You know, they're actually doing just a virtual simulation of the NHL All-Star game this year.
I would be totally okay with
You'll
that.
even be able to see how hungover the players are in their eyes. They're going to add that as an add-on to this the next release of the game.
It's actually just a bar that pops up below. It's like a life bar.
You have to balance on it.
Cale Makar shows up. His is completely full. It's like, Cale. He's like, what? I just had a lot of sugar cookies last night. It's kind of like a kid, eh? The All-Star game rosters have been kind of revealed, and Dylan Larkin was chosen as the Red Wings representative, making him a 3-time All-Star, which was the right choice for Detroit. You look at, players who at different points deserved it. I think Ville Husso maybe could have gotten a shout. I think Filip Hronek could have gotten a shout, but those are guys who didn't play at an elite level all season so far, and I think Larkin has maintained that all year.
Poor Dylan, he just wants to go to Cabo with everybody else.
This guy just needs a couple weeks off to rest and recover as usual, and just keeps getting brought into the All-Star game.
He's like, well, we could have finished the contract negotiation, but now I got to go to the All-Star game, so there's no free time.
Don't joke, Evan.
And
then
what makes you think I'm joking?
And then he's going to be All-Star game MVP, and that's another $100,000 per year on the contract, and he's going to wear the shades again. He's just going to look too cool.
And he's going to donate the car he wins to some needy family, and everyone's like, now he's such a good guy as well. Like, yeah, it's not good for the Red Wings budget, that's for sure.
Listen, if Larkin doesn't re-sign with the Red Wings, and then in his first interview after he says, honestly, I was just tired of going to the All-Star game by default, I'd respect it a little bit.
Look, I'd be heartbroken, and this podcast would go through some dark moments again, but that would be the only thing that could bring me some joy in that process.
Could you imagine the first, very honest interview, and he's just like, just tired of being an All-Star. I just wanted to go play in Colorado where I could just disappear.
Yeah, I'm the 4th best player on my team now. Do you know what I do during the All-Star game? I go lay on a beach and get a massage.
Sipping on Mai Tais.
It's like, Dylan, Arizona offered you $13 million a year. Why don't you take it? You kidding me? They'd send me to the All-Star game twice in a year.
Yeah. Oh.
The picks that they made to start are as follows. In the Metro, Sidney Crosby, Johnny Gaudreau, Kevin Hayes, which is hysterical because he was just healthy scratched by Torts. Jack Hughes, who is having an unreal season. Brock Nelson, Alex Ovechkin, who's pretty decent. Andrei Svechnikov, Igor Shesterkin. In the Atlantic, Kucherov, Larkin, Marner, Nick Suzuki, Tage the Rage Thompson, Brady Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, Linus Ullmark. In the Central, Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov, Clayton Keller, Jason Robertson, Vlad Tarasenko, Seth Jones, Cale Makar, Josh Morrissey, UC Saros. And in the Pacific, Matty Beniers, Kevin Fiala, Nazem Kadri, Connor McDavid, Elias Pettersson, Troy Terry, Erik Karlsson, and Logan Thompson. Now, I believe it's 3 players per division extra, so 12 additional players are going to be added in by Twitter voting.
Adam Ernie, Ryan Reeves. That's all I got.
I honestly think
I have a terrible time remembering the bad players in the NHL.
Somehow John Scott gets voted in again.
Yeah. Honestly, we should just vote Brad.
May as well.
Actually, we should vote for the guy who finished second to Brad. What was his name? Tony something?
I don't know.
Yeah, we should vote him into the end. He deserves that. We actually saved him by not voting him into that sham All-Star game.
Let me tell you this straight up, though. If they start throwing average Joes into the NHL All-Star game, I'm watching the hell out of every second of that.
That'd be pretty fun.
That would be great for context.
Yeah.
We had to move on to the next skill event because Tony Gilbert is still doing his fastest skater lap. It's been 4 minutes.
Brad Crisco slipped and fell, is now missing 2 teeth and getting medical attention in the corner where he refuses to leave the ice, saying, "This is my final moment." The remaining players to be voted in by using the hashtag NHL All-Star vote. That's 2 skaters and a goalie. And I don't want to dwell on the All-Star game too long because Brad has a knife pointed at me under the table right now. But basically the question is, are there any Red Wings do you think are deserving or could even be close in a vote? Because in my opinion, I think we've seen enough from Husso and Hronek where they could make some noise in voting.
This is one of those topics where it is very, very important that we get out of our Red Wings sphere and take off the Red Wings colored glasses and look around the Atlantic. When you do that, the answer becomes very clear and very obviously no. Look at the Leafs. Like we said, the best player on the Red Wings isn't even a top 4 player on the Leafs right there. So you could pick 3 guys off that team right now to put ahead of them. And then, that's not even counting the rest of the division, Cole Caulfield, Rasmus Dahlin, 100 players on Tampa, about another dozen on Boston. They're having very good seasons and they deserve some recognition for it, but they are not having all-star level seasons.
The only reason why Leafs fans know who Ville Husso is because Steve Yzerman pulled the rug out from Kyle Dubas and signed him before he could.
Yeah, but then they tuned him up in the one game they played against him. That was Ville Husso's worst game of the season by a lot.
Well, I'm just saying that's why.
Yeah, that's why
it won't happen.
But I will say Red Wings fans are passionate, and if you are going to do it, I think Husso and Hronek are your 2 options.
I would think so too. Ben Chiarot. Vote Ben Chiarot in. That's it. We got to start the momentum right here.
That's how you turn things around. Hey, also Mo Seider. Imagine Mo Seider just goes off for the next week. He'll get votes. He'll get votes just off of recognition, like name recognition. Anyhow, we'll see how that pans out. I think they're going to mix things up a lot this All-Star game in terms of like the stuff they're doing. They're basically leaning into the silliness of it. They're trying not to take it too seriously because that has stopped working since like generations ago. Once I
understood that the All-Star game is not for our generation and older anymore.
Yeah.
I came to terms with what the All-Star event is. It's for the next generation. It's for the kids. I can live with that. It is no longer for me. But I'll tune into some of it.
Here's how I feel about it as a comparison to like average Joe life. So maybe you can't relate, Evan, but Brad, like you and I, imagine your work has like a Christmas banquet every year. And it's like, you're going to get ready. You're going to get dressed. You're going to go to something outside of work hours to see colleagues. Like
just for Karen to puke in the punch or something.
Yeah. It's like, it's going to be kind of a drag and you wish you can just relax at home. But once you're there, it's kind of fun. It's kind of cool to just let loose and celebrate and, relax a little bit and have fun, joke around, whatever, eat, drink, good food, all that fun stuff. And that's kind of how I feel about the All-Star game. Like all the lead in, and it's like we're trying all these ideas to take it seriously or make it fun. And it's like, you break up the season with this. And I'm sure the players, like Larkin has communicated in the past, like you just want to rest and recover.
A lot of players will just be like, I'll take the 1-game suspension that extends my vacation.
I'll never forgive Gary Bettman for that. But it seems like it's kind of fun once you're there. So I'm happy that, the NHL stopped taking it too seriously because that's not the path forward with it, at least right now. And like you said, Evan, it's not for everyone. So just enjoy it for what it is. And I think it's better than having nothing.
And to be completely honest, I don't think a lot of All-Star events for all the major sports are even that interesting. Like the slam dunk contest was the thing to watch for a while.
Not so much anymore, though.
But it's not so much anymore. It's kind of lost its luster.
Yeah.
But the only thing that I really enjoy watching that I think still has some, momentum or something people want to watch in terms of All-Star game is the home run derby.
Oh, yeah.
There's just something about crushing home run balls.
Just crank it.
Just gets people excited. I think that might be the only thing that I like about any All-Star events. But so it's not like the NHL is doing something so completely inadequate where the other leagues are killing it. I just think that might be the nature of All-Star games in general right now.
Brad, I appreciate you politely sitting that one out, as your opinion was completely counter to everything Evan and I said.
Hey, I have a really good solution how to fix the All-Star game.
Is it to get rid of the All-Star game?
No.
What?
No. Okay. So we've all seen the Hunger Games, right? 3-on-3 tournament. Still don't change the format.
Got it.
But the losing 3 divisions don't get those players back the rest of the season.
We're sending Ben Chiarot.
Honestly, I'd rather watch the worst player on every team do that. That would probably still be entertaining.
Wow, we could have solved the Abdelkader to Kaiser contracts way sooner.
We've had this conversation a million times. How much better would it be if guys are just like, I want to challenge Connor McDavid for fastest skater? We vote in.
That'd be
who
so
do we,
cool.
Okay, who do we want to be whoever won fastest shot last year? Let's
Hardest shot, yeah.
hardest shot, whatever. And then players are like, well, I want to, or fans vote in. They're like, this guy is an unreal shot. Or we vote in someone who's got a lazy beam, and they have to shoot 85-mile-an-hour slap shot. It could be something like that.
They've tried that, and in typical NHL fashion,
and it worked amazingly.
No, and in typical NHL fashion, they screwed it up horribly. Remember, they brought Trevor Zegras specifically for the breakaway challenge. He was the only guy invited for an event, and he came out there in his average Joe's get up, put the blindfold on, pulled off one of the most unreal moves I've seen on a breakaway, scored, and lost.
Oh, yeah. That's just
Like,
Well, they basically ended John Scott's career because he made the All-Star game.
Yeah.
They basically, like, behind closed doors, just ended his career. And it turned out to be probably the last All-Star game a lot of people tuned in for.
You know what? I think everyone had a lot of learning from that situation. I think like the NHL threw an absolute fit about that, and I understand why they might not have liked it, but that was too much the way they reacted to it. Anyhow, that's the All-Star game. Les, Brad.
Where is it this year?
pick somewhere warm.
Sunrise, Florida. Sorry.
Yeah, there you go.
It's always somewhere warm.
Put it in Edmonton and see how many one-game suspensions you get afterwards.
That suspension always reminds me of the Simpsons quote where Homer's sitting on the couch. Marge comes into the room. She's like, Homer, the work called. They said if you don't come in today, you don't bother coming in on Monday. And he's like, woohoo, 4-day weekend.
All right, and we have successfully summed up the NHL All-Star game.
Let's move on here. I'm just going to throw this idea out there. It was reported that Buffalo Sabres goalie prospect Erik Portillo, who's a lot of listeners will know him as a University of Michigan goalie, is not expected to sign with the team. He's going to maybe seek to walk to free agency, as is his right. Is this someone where the Red Wings could potentially acquire his rights from Buffalo? Because Buffalo, with this indication that maybe, they have Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, they have
Devin Levi
in the ranks. Portillo's probably seeing that he doesn't have a path forward to the Sabres net. Would this be someone where the Red Wings could get his rights on the cheap and just add another option for their goaltending future? And this isn't throw Sebastian Cossa overboard. No, he is still the number one option in the Red Wings pipeline, and they need to focus on that. But you can never have too many options in my mind.
Well, right now, realistically, Sebastian Cossa is the only option.
Yeah.
So I would highly advise signing and drafting some more goalies. The ones they do have aren't working out very well.
Monkeypaw curls. The Red Wings drafted goalie 7th overall this year.
Don't you put that evil on me. Not that nobody in the right mind has given up on Cossa, nor should they, but he can't be your only option because, again, we've used this line way too many times, but goalies are voodoo. It's just as likely that Cossa flames out as he doesn't. You don't know. You need other options because you need something to stick. And do I think, Erik Portillo is going to be the future of NHL goaltending? No. But he might be pretty good. So if you can get him without giving up an asset to do it in free agency, or if you can trade a pretty middling asset to get negotiating rights with him, yeah, you do it. You absolutely do it. And obviously, the Red Wings got to be super familiar with him because he's playing just down the road. So if they choose to not pursue him, it's probably because they firmly don't believe in him. Or, if they do, well, then they're pretty confident in what they're doing.
All right. In other NHL news, I just want to take a look here before we jump into overtime. The Florida Panthers are currently 42 games played, 42 points. That puts them 6 solid points out of a wild card spot, and Pittsburgh has games in hand on them. So it could be as much as 10 points out of a wild card spot. Florida doesn't own their first round pick this year. Montreal does.
So if they win the lottery, Montreal could potentially have the first 2 picks.
Yep. Montreal could follow up drafting Slavkovsky first overall with drafting Connor Bedard and then Adam Fantilli or Michkov or
I did not sign up for this.
Well, Florida did, and that's why you protect your first-round picks. And I mean, the Chiarot trade that they made last year was an overpayment at the time. It was an overpayment now. It was foolish to the point where it set the trade market off to a point where every single GM that had a halfway viable defenseman to trade was shopping him around because you were never going to get a higher price. We heard, like the rumors started flowing in. Every single GM was on the phone trying to get a high price for their defenseman, and that was kicked off by Florida. Look, I'm a big believer in Florida's lineup. I understand that that's a team that's not always found the success that they've needed, but that's a long ways out of the playoffs. Like we talk about the Red Wings probably not making the playoffs. They are only 1 point back at Florida with 3 games in hand. Florida's got a much different lineup. The Red Wings don't have a Matthew Tkachuk and a lot of other pieces, but Florida has a long way to go. Did they make a colossal mistake here?
Unironically, do you know what Florida doesn't have? Ville Husso. They can't get a save. They're paying almost, $15 million for near league worst goaltending?
Yeah, that's find a struggling team or a struggling coach and, point to a struggling goaltending group, and that's what they have right now.
Well, Florida right now might be the recipe for disaster in the future when looking at coaching and goaltending. They overpaid massively in free agency to get Bobrovsky, and that has failed miserably, but a lot of people predicted that would fail miserably when it happened. They won the President's Trophy with Andrew Brunette as their coach, and for some reason brought in, not that Paul Maurice is a bad coach, but he's not a great coach. So that was a confusing move. Now all of a sudden these two things are absolutely tanking them this year. Meanwhile, you look at Andrew Brunette, who, albeit as an assistant coach, went to New Jersey, and they're one of the biggest turnaround success stories in the NHL this year.
To me, Florida's biggest undoing is at the executive level, and that includes the general manager. Like, they make a lot of reactionary decisions to their roster based on very recent events, and none of them have paid off. I can't think of the last time they had a trade that, I don't know. Matthew Tkachuk trade obviously was not great, but they're getting results from him.
I don't even know that it wasn't great. I know he had a big reaction to it, but at the same time, you look at how Huberdeau's performing in Calgary, and his season hasn't gone as expected. And then you even look at the ages of the guys that he moved. I still don't think I think that was a wrong value to get.
But when you're the President Trophy winning team, do you move on from 2 guys that were very cornerstone pieces in doing that, plus picks?
If you do, I think, I don't know. You had some big brass ones to make it. I don't know that I would have. I think you're right.
I don't think that trade's worth needling. I think the point of Florida's GM being way too reactionary, being very accurate.
All the teams that finally overcome the adversity, it takes time. Like, just because you lost the year you won the President's Trophy doesn't mean you're a bad team or that you need to totally overhaul. Like, you see a lot of teams keep the same core and let them battle through it, and you just sort of fix the auxiliary pieces to those teams. Florida's just like, screw it. We're going to get rid of our coach. We're going to get rid of some of our best players and see if they're rolling the dice.
Man, massive credit to Tampa Bay and their management at the time after getting swept by Columbus for sticking with it. Obviously, every team makes some changes, and they made changes here and there, but by and large, they stuck with their group and their core, and it paid off to them to the tune of 3 Cup finals and 2 Stanley Cups.
And it's not easy to do that, I'm sure. I'm sure there's immense pressure from every direction to make changes.
Look at Toronto's the flip side of that.
That's what good executives, good teams do. They know what they've got, and they know what they need to do to win. And it's probably not flipping some of your best pieces just because you lost one playoff series.
No one to hold them, no one to fold them. It's literally it's easier said than done, especially in retrospect.
But Florida, you see it repeatedly, which, I mean, I don't feel bad for them. They're in Detroit's division. They can shoot themselves in the foot all they want, but I swear to God, if Montreal drafts 2 players in the top 5, I'm going to be a little salty.
Dude, okay, look, imagine this. Buffalo on the up and up. Ottawa not having the season that they intended, but they don't have nothing for the future. Like, that's a team that will be about where Detroit is moving forward. Tampa Bay is still who they are. Toronto still has all their pieces. If Montreal adds Bedard and, Fantilli or Carlson or Michkov, Detroit's going to be in trouble in the Atlantic. Like, legitimately in trouble.
They could have 98 points and finish 7th.
It's hardly a joke.
The Atlantic could get all wild cards for the next 5-10 years.
God. Let's take a look at the standings right now. In the East, the Metro, Carolina, New Jersey, and New York hold the divisional seeds. Washington just a bit behind New York. Pittsburgh 4 points behind them. Washington and Pittsburgh hold the wild card spots. In the Atlantic, Boston, who seemingly doesn't know how to lose. Toronto and Tampa Bay hold the divisional seeds. And then outside the wild card spot, the Islanders are looking in, and Buffalo's making the surge. I think the amount of contention in the East stops at Florida, and that's just because of Florida's roster, not their point totals. I'd say from Detroit down, you're probably looking at teams that are firmly out. In the West, Dallas, Winnipeg, and Minnesota hold the Central, while Vegas, LA, and Seattle hold the Pacific. Calgary and Edmonton are holding down the wildcard spots, with St. Louis and Nashville not far behind. Nashville actually has 3 games in hand, and they're making it very interesting. Colorado is going to they're going to get in it. Like, there's no way Colorado's going to miss it, I don't think. They've had a world of injuries.
We've seen this before. There's a reason Pittsburgh has the crazy playoff streak right now, but Tampa doesn't, because they had a season like this. Remember, Tampa Bay is not all that far removed from missing a playoff.
From their disappointing year where they missed playoffs. Yeah, pretty akin actually to Vegas last year.
Yeah, exactly. It can happen. Again, if all goes as planned, I would think Colorado's going to surge back in, but they might not, which would be crazy.
No Cale Makar, no Nathan McKinnon in the playoffs. We'll see how it shakes out. I think the West is super interesting. They have been all year. It's been a unpredictable mess. It's like, who do you root for if you want the best hockey available? Like, okay, the reigning Cup champs need to find their way back in it, and yeah, there's divisional seeds. Do you really want Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl missing the playoffs? Like,
Edmonton says maybe.
I just don't understand how many times. Like, if they miss, that's got to be it for Ken Holland.
All you got to do is be able to tie your skates in the bottom 6 of that team.
But no, it's not true. Like, that team, that's the ultimate demonstration of what's missing or what the difference is between the NHL and the NBA. Like, you cannot get by with just 1 or 2 good players. You have maybe, quite honestly, the 2 best players on the planet, if not first and third or first and fourth, carrying you to the point where they won series almost on their own in previous playoffs, and they're still struggling to make it. It's an 82-game season. You need to be doing better. And I'm not going to pretend to know what the answers are, but Edmonton has just never had the mix where this isn't.
I know what the answer is, and I know what Edmonton has not done. And this is going to sound overly simplistic, but it's the honest answer.
Well, don't give it away for free.
Acquire better talent.
Oh.
The players
play better hockey.
The players they choose to bring in have been exceptionally poor decisions for years now. Even going back to pre-Ken Holland days, and obviously we dealt with Ken Holland. We know the type of player he likes, and that is the exact opposite of what you should be surrounding Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl with. Can't wait for them to finally go all in at the draft, or at the trade deadline, just to give a first-round pick and a good prospect for Joel Edmondson.
I'm going to ask something that's, totally tangential and probably getting away from what we want to do.
Welcome to the podcast.
Do you guys think Connor McDavid stays in Edmonton his whole career?
No,
I don't. At this point, no.
He's aged terribly.
Look, I'm not saying this because from the outside in, and yeah, it would be entertaining to see the best player on the planet move, and you almost never see that in hockey. When was the last time you saw Gretzky?
Edmonton.
Oh God. But quite honestly, like I do think it's already been close, or at least frustrations have boiled over. Like, he has met with management publicly. Like, it's been publicly known on multiple occasions, whether it's, pretty much signing off on, yeah, Ken Holland's a guy, or what's the plan for the previous regime, or Ken Holland, what's our plan for the next few years? Like, I need to be sold on this. He's not dumb. Like, you got to start winning soon. He is playing a level of hockey that's never before been seen in the NHL, and that's what happens when the best player on the planet is in his prime. But that's a limited amount of years. Is he going to be a bad player at 30? God, no. He'll probably still be the best player on the planet, if not close to it. But now is the time where he should be dominating. And because it's not the NBA, because it's not an individualistic sport where it's just he and Leon can take over a game and win it 82 times and then 16 times in the playoffs, he's going to want something else. He's not from Edmonton. He doesn't have the attachment there for that reason. Like, I don't want to say he wouldn't stay loyal to the team, but that's the guy who loves to win, and he's pissed off when he loses. And you've seen that frustration. If they continue on this path, and let's say they miss the playoffs or have a first-round exit over the next couple of years, I don't see how he stays past his contract.
Okay.
And that's a big thing to state. Like, I think that's a bold claim. I don't know.
I feel like there are a lot of people sort of feel that way. With whether they know anything about it or not, that's
it's becoming more of a common opinion.
You hear people talk about it a lot more.
Think about it this way: at any point in Sidney Crosby's career, did you ever say, "Oh, that's a guy who's going to want out of Pittsburgh"?
No,
never once. Those are the guys. Like, credit to Pittsburgh. I've had a lot of criticism about some individual moves that they made, but their overall scheme, their overall story has been: do what you need to do to make sure that this core, who has won cups, stays together and get them the support that they need. You can win with Crosby, Malkin, Letang, and at times Fleury. We've seen it. It's been demonstrated multiple times. Just get the support around them. You're going to have to make uncomfortable decisions to mortgage futures. You're going to have to avoid signing bad long-term UFA contracts. You're going to have to let good players go and cycle through players before maybe their life cycle in your team you would in other cases. But as long as you have this core, you can make it work. Pittsburgh, done it beautifully. Edmonton.
It doesn't get easier when you draft like a generational talent.
No.
It's great that you've got that player, but now the pressure is just way more because now you're on the clock.
And I love that about the sport. I really do. But it does hurt my hockey heart, the hockey fan in me, to see Connor McDavid. Watch, he's going to go win the cup in June, and we're going to look like idiots.
They'll just clip this.
Yeah.
This is fine.
It does hurt the hockey fan in me to see him toiling and fighting for the playoffs when this guy should be at the top. Not that it should be handed to him, but yeah, I just wish Edmonton would give him a better team. He signed through 2025, 2026 for what it's worth.
It's coming up quick.
All right, very quickly here. We don't have a lot of time to jump into it, but the CHL, Connor Bedard didn't move. Pretty much, it was his choice. He wants to stay in Regina. He'll be a Regina Pat for the rest of his CHL career. We'll see how much noise they make in terms of playoffs and things. They're not exactly one of the strongest teams out there, so it's probably where the road is going to run out for him, and that's fine. I think Regina's hands were tied here because if he doesn't want it, then they weren't going to do it. But they could have got a haul for him. Other players who moved, oh boy. People who are in Windsor or people from Detroit who can cross over into Windsor, the Windsor Spitfires have Shane Wright, his CHL rights. So they gave up Miedema, Gavin McCarthy, a second, a third, a fourth, a sixth, a fourth, a conditional sixth, and a conditional fifth for Shane Wright.
CHL trades are outrageous.
They're insane.
That's not even the craziest one because in the OHL, you're not allowed to trade first-round picks.
Yeah. In the WHL, Kamloops Blazers got not just Ryan Hoffer, but Olin Zellweger in exchange from the Everett Silvertips in exchange for 4 players, a first, a second, a fourth, a first, a fifth, a first, a third, and a first.
Oh, my God.
I love it.
It's like the Shane Wright trade, but you add 4 first-round picks.
Oh, my God. Why don't they just trade for Shane Wright?
The three leagues in the CHL, if you didn't know this, are not actually real. They're just simulated NHL, be a pro.
You just keep adding one thing until it finally says okay.
It's that game. We're adding a player every week until Team Japan wins the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, pretty much. Anyhow, that's the CHL. I just thought that was a good bit of fun. It has obvious ramifications for teams, and we'll have time to dive into that.
Another training camp has 58 players showing up.
Oh, my God. It's such a wild way to be, and I have a lot of respect for the GMs at those leagues who can operate that way. At some point, you must say, like, the GM on the other side of the phone is like, add a third, and you already see like 11 picks on the table. You're like, I'm not even running that through our like generator. I don't even want to do the math on that. Just take the third. Who cares?
The fax machine at the NHL central office, if they allowed that, would just explode.
it's actually
already
so
working
printing.
overtime on trade deadline day. That would just blow up if trades like that came through.
They tried tweeting out the trade, but Elon hasn't made that 2,000 character edition yet. So anyhow, that's that. We'll get more into other teams like the Philadelphias and like that, teams who are going to have some things to reckon with this offseason and at the trade deadline in another episode. But for now, I'm going to bring this over to overtime. This episode of the Winged Wheel podcast is the overtime is proudly brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel podcast if you want to support the show. Currently going on a Toronto Maple Leafs ticket giveaway. So for tomorrow night, we have 2 tickets to every Detroit Red Wings home game. And the majority of those go to our Patreon supporters. Patrons also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord episodes, or not Discord episodes, overtime episodes that we post after this. So any questions that don't get answered on the main show, we answer the additional overtime show, and we just let loose, shoot the shit. And so it's actually, they're a lot of fun. And actually, Mel listens to those and she likes those better than the main show. I think it's because
makes sense. Yeah.
And you also get entered into every single giveaway that we do automatically, and you get access to the Winged Wheel Podcast Discord. So a lot of benefits. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast. This show happens because of you. Joseph Barry actually asked a good question about Erik Portillo. And fortunate that we raised that. So JM Rhapsody says, does it feel weird when you see a player wearing a certain number? It took me forever to get over Nyquist and now Fabbri wearing 14 and Abs wearing 8. All I can think was, you're not Shanahan. You're not Larionov. Now Walman's wearing 96 and Suter 24. I know they're not retired, but it still feels wrong.
I get over it really quickly, actually. You see it the first time, but there's certain things that just immediately take your mind out of it. Like Shanny shot right, Fabbri shoots left, so you see it, and it doesn't look like Shanny, so your brain automatically disassociates it very quickly.
52 not being Jonathan Ericsson was very weird for me at first. I know I had a little bit of a hard-on for hating on Ericsson's game. Probably too much, but seeing a player that I loved playing on the ice in Jonatan Berggren was very jarring. Coyote season tickets in Tempe says, do you three honestly believe that the NHL draft lotteries performed completely as advertised with no shenanigans of any kind? I believe it usually is. However, when it comes to drafts that have perceived generational talents, it appears that teams with either 1, precarious arena situations, Pittsburgh or Edmonton, or 2, play in very large markets like Toronto or New Jersey, appear to get very lucky quite often.
New Jersey's not a big market in the NHL's eyes. I'm not a conspiracy guy. I like to joke about them and it's fun, but like when it comes down to it, 999 out of 1,000 conspiracy theories I just assume are bullshit, and I'm right on 999 of them.
When you walked into my house today, you said, did you know that dogs can't look up?
Yeah. But the one conspiracy theory I will buy into is I don't think the Crosby draft was entire. Every other one hasn't raised too many red flags. Like, if we're being honest here and you're the NHL, did you want Connor McDavid in Edmonton?
No.
Of course you didn't. You would have wanted that guy in the Eastern time zone playing at 7 p.m. in a huge American market. That's what would have been best for the NHL. What was best for the NHL in 2005? Making sure one of their, top tier organizations didn't have to move because fans stopped showing up because they were so bad. What saved the Pittsburgh Penguins from moving? It was Sidney Crosby. So that is probably the only one I will ever buy into in the entirety of hockey history. But I could absolutely see that one being legit.
So does Connor Bedard save Arizona, even though they are a Western Conference team?
I could see it. I don't think it. I think nowadays it's harder to get away with stuff than it was we'll call it the YouTube era. I have a real hard time. Like, the problem is the Arizona Coyotes also have a very legitimate shot at just winning it fairly. But
I agree with you. I think if anything has happened in the past, I just don't think it could happen anymore.
I think I'm on that page as well.
And I completely agree. I think you can probably pick and choose a narrative for any team that wins. Like there's something, if your team sucks that bad and the NHL isn't the NFL where, you know, when a team is struggling, it's like, hey, they might not be able to like open the doors tomorrow struggling at points over the last, 30 years. That's different than now. But the Crosby, like you can pull a narrative out of anyone who's won any of those lotteries. But yeah, the Crosby one to me was like, I'm probably going to follow my own guidance here and just say it was just dumb luck for the NHL. But boy, does the trajectory of this league look way different if he ends up going to Anaheim.
And like, it's easy to forget. There has never been a prospect since Crosby to have had the hype that Crosby had going into that draft. McDavid, you could argue, is ultimately a better player, but the McDavid hype did not touch Crosby's hype going into that 05 draft and draft lottery.
Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh.
No, I like the other one better.
That's what they do when they drink.
Everywhere.
Who knows? Like Pittsburgh could have been in Waterloo for all we know.
They were
Jim
close.
The Pittsburgh Penguins had their Christmas party at Rim Park.
Yeah, they were very close to moving into practically Toronto territory, like an hour away.
Balsillie had bought land on University in Kitchener-Waterloo. Like it was down the road. It wasn't just a theory.
It's still very empty out there.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question here on the same theme. Babel Landeskog says, after years of draft lottery mixed results, let's say that the hockey gods smile upon us and somehow the Detroit Red Wings get Connor Bedard. What would that actually mean for the Red Wings in their rebuild? Is the rebuild automatically over at that point, or is it close? Would he be on the first line right away? What's his role in special teams? Do the Wings go out and sign a big fish free agent a few days later? We can daydream all we want, but it may help to think about it logically if the best case scenario happens this summer.
This accelerates the rebuild by a lot because he solves the Red Wings' biggest problem. I would not be surprised if he is the Red Wings' best player the day he walks through the door. He is that good.
I'd be pretty shocked if he was better than Larkin day one.
I would bet as a rookie he's over a point per game, and that's not something Larkin has done in his career for a full season.
On the Red Wings?
On the Red Wings.
Okay.
But
I don't think you're crazy,
I'm
skeptical.
I'm not saying it's going to happen for sure. I'm saying I wouldn't be surprised if.
Yeah. Okay.
I would owe Ryan at least a few $100 because I'm going through that window 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. It dramatically changes the rebuild, the trajectory of this organization. Like, we've talked at length over the years about the hardest thing to do in the NHL is get elite talent, and it's almost impossible to win without elite talent. So few teams have ever done it in the history of the NHL. If you get a guy that's right now looking like at worst to be a top 5 player in the league, yes, the effects of how that changes the Red Wings cannot be overstated.
Yeah, I also think they probably go out and add as well. Like,
absolutely. You get Connor Bedard, you're all in. The rebuild is over. There is no more selling off. You are going out and
you're not a cup contender day one, but you start to act like you can be.
But you can turn around quick. Let's not forget it was, if you want to go, I'll use Chicago. 3 years from Patrick Kane to Patrick Kane lifting the cup.
That is outrageous.
Yeah.
When you think about it.
Yeah. I mean, the Pittsburgh Penguins was 4 years with Crosby.
The Wings could, let's say they do get Bedard, like they could potentially be on that trajectory based on, they got a Moritz Seider, they've got a Lucas Raymond, they've got Simon Edvinsson, they've got Husso, Cossa maybe at that point. Like 3-4 years, the team looks radically different. Like it's not totally out to lunch to think that could be the trajectory. I don't like this conversation at all because we're putting this bad juju and these mixed vibes out into the world.
We're talking about a 2.5% chance.
It's not happening for the Red Wings. It's never happening. We're never winning a draft lottery, but that doesn't. Am I ever going to win the lottery? No. Have I ever played the lottery? No. Are there 3-hour drives I'm on where I'm fantasizing about what I do if I won the lottery? Absolutely. That's what it is. We're having fun with it, Evan.
Oh yeah. I feel weird having this conversation. Just even the thought of that being possible.
Did you have a caffeinated drink before this?
No, but it feels like I did.
You're shaking. All right, this one from a new patron called The Angry Ginger. Welcome, and thank you so much for your support. Says, hey guys, new patron here. Love the content. I drive a lot for work and thoroughly enjoy the conversation. It makes long drives go by quicker. My question would be, with Zadina being close to coming back, would they consider sending him to Grand Rapids to do a conditioning stint, or is that even an option? If it is an option, would playing him right away in Detroit be advertising him to other clubs for a trade? So first, actually, we should note Zadina had a little bit of a setback with his fractured leg/ankle. So he's week to week right now, but they could put him on a conditioning stint, definitely.
And they should put him on a conditioning stint, like you should with almost every player coming off a major injury.
Yeah, not like Fabbri was ready for a long time before he played.
He was skating for a month.
Yeah, so that's his conditioning stint, and they could see that he was ready, but I would imagine Zadina will get a look there. Yeah, advertising him to other clubs for a trade, it's certainly going to be an option, but you want to make sure that he's game ready, right? Like he doesn't have a resume right now that would get you a lot for him, and think what you want about Filip Zadina. There's no point in dishing him for nothing right now. His contract's cheap. You have him for term. So if you're going to show off the best version of Filip Zadina that you possibly can. All right, last question here. Frank the Tank says, although we all expect Detroit to be mostly sellers this trade deadline, does Stevie poke his head around trading for Chychrun and solidifying the left side of the 24-year-old with term who could be part of the core moving forward? Trade proposal, Detroit sends protected first rounder this year, deferred to 2024 if pick is top 5. William Wallinder, Filip Zadina, second from St. Louis in 2023, and whatever other pieces you may think is needed. Who says no, and what must be added to be considered reasonable? Side note, great job at the pod, and amazing to see the community you guys have built from the passion of the team we all cheer for. You guys truly amplify the love we have for Detroit, win or lose. Frank the Tank, thank you so very much for the support. That means a lot.
I don't like that trade, which means it's probably close to accurate.
Why do I feel like that's not nearly enough?
I also think more would need to be added. Like
that's a top 10 pick in a loaded draft. Like, I'm not sure as a Red Wings GM I would do that, because not necessarily that I don't think the value's there. Like I said, the trade makes me uncomfortable, which is how I know it's in the ballpark of correct.
To compete with the other teams and what they'd offer, yeah.
Yeah. The Red Wings' left side of their D isn't a huge problem, and I'm more inclined to swing to get that top end forward in this draft, which is a very loaded draft at forward. So I'd be hard pressed to give up a top 10 pick for, I forget if Chychrun's got 2 to 3 years left on his contract, which isn't the Red Wings contention window. So I'd rather roll the dice on the draft and keep all the additional pieces, but value-wise speaking, that sounds about where it needs to be.
If they're getting nervous on Chychrun and the price comes down, like he signed for 2 years after this one at 4.6, yeah, you start to think about it, but I don't know, help if they win Connor Bedard too. Then you go out. I would almost want to wait until after the draft, at which point Chychrun might not be available.
Yeah, you'd almost, maybe if you give up a 2024 first. I don't know.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel podcast. We are going to be recording bright and early Sunday morning. Evan is absolutely jazzed about that.
You got it.
Brad and I are going to bed now to make sure that we have the energy. But no, it's going to be a good show. So we'll see you Sunday after the Toronto and Columbus games. We'd like to thank all of you so much for tuning in. If you're new to the show, welcome. If you're a longtime listener, thank you so much for putting up with our buffoonery. We really, really appreciate it. Our sponsors of this episode, NordVPN, as well as all of our supporters on Patreon. Our name-level supporters, Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Armchair GM / Genius, Nick Perks, Terry Driver for the number 69, Crying Ryan Hannah's Banana Slam and Jamathon, Glenn Brabham, Matthew M. Rice, Croner's Left Knee, Blake Wheeler's Exploded Testicle, Christ, Carl Bertanen Analuski, Chimmy, Chris P, Citizen High Five, Connor Scovey, Coyote Season Tickets in Tempe, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Give Blood Fight Probert, Red Hot Hronek, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joseph Barry, Kalen Wood, Kevin James, King Tone, Las Ensaladas Picantes, Marcus, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, Nedeljkovic, goalie number 1, Nicholas Fritz, R.A., Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin. That's what I appreciates about you. The Podcasting Couch, Venom, Zachary Rogers, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, #1 Red Guys fan, Antonio Gracias, Babe Landeskog, Ben Barron, proud member of the Jake Walman Gritty Club, Brad Simmons, Brian Vasha, Carl Thames, Connor Leighton, Darren Fick, Philip Zadiz Nuts, G-Rated Snowblower Joke 2023, Griffey Boy, Hronek's Handlebar, James Laporte, Jeremiah Dobo, JM Rhapsody, John Evans, John Ingalls, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Matt Keeler, Matt S., Loyal Soldier of the Cheesebag Army, Maximilian, Melissa Erickson, Ricky Bongrips, Servo, The Hodag. Thank you all so very much. We'll talk to you Sunday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.